Hello, welcome to Toto podcast. My name is Purity Mora and I will be hosting in place of Eric Namai. On this episode of Toto on Video podcast, we are going to have a very interesting conversation. One that some people are very shy to talk about and some people deem it a taboo, but a very important conversation nonetheless and must be had, both boys and for girls. And with me, I am joined with two incredible young women who are doing an amazing job in that field of menstrual health and hygiene, period poverty, and period shame. Please welcome to Toto Video Podcast. Introduce yourself. Karibu.
Thank you. My name is Kainet Chelagat. I'm currently a psychology student at Daystar. I'm part of the Toto News team and I'm a sustainable food campaigner at Food at Corp. And I also have my own initiative where I aim to end period poverty and also educate young girls on menstrual health.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we'll get back to that amazing job you're doing. Please, second guest.
Hello, my name is Aisha Mohammed. My pseudonym is Bint Aisha. I am a writer and author, a poet, and SRHR advocate, which is sexual reproductive health and health rights. I'm a mental health advocate. I'm very big on mental wellness and well-being. Yes, and that's all from my end.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Amazing. You guys are doing an incredible job. And I'd like us to talk about this topic that's deemed a taboo, especially in our African community, and also to debunk myths about it. So, Kainet, you talked about your project, the Kainet Pad Project. Yes, please tell us more about that. When did you start? Why did you start? And what that means to you, please.
Yes, so I started the Kainet Pad project in 2020 before COVID hit. And I started it after seeing this girl on the television that committed suicide because she was shamed in school because of her periods. And that got me thinking. So I was like, what can I do, and visiting public schools in my area, I noticed that this thing is actually real. People are going through so much, not having, not being able to access sanitary towels. So with the little I got, I then began my project, and that's how I began doing pad drives and educating girls on menstrual health.
An amazing journey that is. Thank you for sharing. And you've mentioned something about shame. She was shamed in school. Sad reality that it is young girls are being shamed, and of all places, a place that is supposed to be safe for them, school. Aisha, in your work of advocacy, as an SRHR advocate, what challenges in terms of period shame, or what views do you have on it, and maybe you could tell us your experience in that as well.
I believe different schools tend to take periods in a different way, especially the ladies. You might find some schools, if this would be division of classes, but some schools take it very, very seriously and some don't. Most of the private schools, some of the private schools, not all of them, take this matter very seriously, where they are very, very keen on the environment the kid is learning in, who is surrounding the child. And when it comes to that, I mean the children, how are they brought about with the menstruation? How will the teacher talk to them? There's some schools where you get kids are being shamed by teachers themselves when it comes to menstruation, which is a terrible thing, and other kids as well making fun of them. So this brings about a lot of issues when you're dealing with it. When you go to schools necessarily, it's a bit difficult to get the child to trust you.
And do you think it happens at home as well, like in our communities? Do you think, like, because the other day we were watching telly, and there was it an MP who was, yeah, it was a whole thing. We had billboards coming up and talking about kunyesha, it's not a shame. Yeah, so it is important because language is critical, right? You will agree with me that language in the way we address matters can be discriminatory as well. We're going to get back to that conversation, but first let us debunk myths around menstruation. Number one, periods are unimportant and should be ignored as much as possible because they are dirty, toxic, and useless. What do you think?
For me, I don't think they are unimportant. They are the most important thing, if I may say, and they should be normalized, Like, it should be normal for me to just go to anyone and just be like, no, I'm on my periods and I need a pad. The same way I'd need an elastoplast from you is the same way I'd need a pad. Yeah, so I'd say it should be very normal.
It should be normal. It's not toxic. What do you think, Aisha?
I think, first of all, periods are a very important part of a lady's life because every woman will get to the point where most women, not every, most women, they get to the point where they have to undergo that. And how we introduce our young girl matters a lot because that will determine how they look into themselves or how they even view periods, their bodies and everything else. If we introduce them in a negative manner, they will have a negative perception towards not only periods, but the time when they're going through the period themselves. They won't like their bodies. They won't like anything about themselves, about being a woman, which is a terrible thing. So I believe as parents, as a community, as teachers, as educationists, as neighbors, as adults, when a kid gets to the period where they're having their first or they're about to, or you want to sit them down and have that conversation, we have to be very careful what we say because that determines it. And we have to inform them that this is a very important process of life because it's going to be continuous. It's going to be there. It's going to be present every month. Unless there is pregnancy, but that's a completely different issue. But I feel like they're not toxic.
They're not toxic. They're not dirty.
Yeah,
it's
they're completely safe.
Right?
Yeah.
Myth number 3: periods are a women's issue only. Do the men or do boys need to be brought into the conversation? Okay, Ned. I mean, in your work, do you involve?
Yes. Yeah. So mostly people would think that I only work with the girls, but when I began, my first ever pad drive involved the boys too.
Amazing.
And I educated all of them. Like, I have sessions where I bring all of them together and others now specifically for the girls. So yes, I make sure that they are all aware of this because at the end of the day, they need to be their sister's keeper. So yeah, it's very important for boys and men to be educated on menstruation too.
Aisha, what will happen if we do not involve our boys and our men in these conversations?
I think we are creating an ignorant society.
A very ignorant society, yeah.
And once people are ignorant, they're very, 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 very reactive to things and not in a good way. And I feel as though boys should be part of this conversation because there are a lot of ways they react that are very, very negative, and it has a very huge impact on the women. Because right now, you might find men in supermarkets buying the ladies' pads, the tampons. It could be. But now you'd meet other men ridiculing the man for doing that, as though that's not part of being a husband or a brother. Like it's not a good thing to do it, which is not really, really okay for us. I feel like it's high time we talk to them.
to avoid the stigma
Yeah,
that
around
surrounds
it.
that conversation.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Myth number 4 was it? If you have your period, you are not allowed to play sports or swim or do any active, activities or sports. Yeah.
Yeah. From my perspective, I'd say if you're comfortable with it, then you do it.
You should not
Do
be
it. Yeah,
disallowed.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So girls, when you do not, no one should tell you cannot do it. If you feel you're in a position to,
Yeah.
do it. Right.
Unless swimming. Swimming now.
You're not able to.
Swimming, yeah. Even that as yourself, I know you feel uncomfortable doing it. But if it's
But no one
something
should
else,
stop you.
no one should stop you.
Great, yeah,
Yeah.
right. I'm going back to our conversation about your project, Kenneth. What are the challenges that you're facing in your work as an advocate? And Aisha as well, you can join in. Tell us in your project, the Kenneth Pad project. What are the challenges that you're facing as a young woman in that space?
Yeah. The first thing I'd say majorly is funding, because you really do need money to go to like certain extents, in the case where I'd like to go to like somewhere that's very rural, I need the money to get there. So money is really a big factor. Yeah. And then another thing is, how am I being looked at, because if I come to you and I'm saying I am advocating to end period poverty, people will be shocked. They'll be like, what made you pick this specific thing? I mean, there are other things you can work on. Yeah, like you can. Yeah, exactly. So that's really challenging, because people won't understand my perspective and where I'm coming from and what my vision is. Yeah, and the other thing is the government joining hands with us, because governments are supposed to supply sanitary towels to schools every month, but they do that so irregularly. And if you just tell them that at least even incorporate people who are passionate in doing this, in giving back, like if you guys can't do it on your own, then incorporate these people who are interested in doing it. Yeah, so that's mainly one of the biggest challenges that
Thank you, Kenneth. To you, Aisha, what are the challenges that you face in your work of advocacy in SRHR?
I think the biggest would be an ignorant community, or the environment we necessarily put our children into. I think adults need to even go through SRHR trainings necessarily to understand what menstruation is. Even some of the adults don't understand what menstruation cycle is, how long does it last, heavy flow, light flow, and this leads to kids not having the information until they're adults, and they have a lot of misinformation, which is a bit dangerous sometimes. And most of the time, it's when you're dealing with an ignorant society, most of the reaction is explosive. It's not one where you can table and discuss. It's something that, no, this is not up for discussion. What I want goes, and whatever you're doing is not just right by society. And when you're trying to deal with that, it gives it a lot of a hard atmosphere, especially when you're dealing with kids, because then the kids will still not feel safe enough to talk about these issues, even when you're talking to them. Yes, the community.
For them to have conversations around menstruation.
Yes.
So period shame goes back to period shame as a huge challenge for you in terms of your work.
Yes. And another thing is, as parents, I feel when we're talking to our girls about periods, we should also talk about we should talk to the boys as well, because to avoid boys sitting outside laughing at girls who have just gotten their periods, which is shameful, and again gets back to the idea of period shaming. The second thing is organizations that are just opened just to get the funding and not do the work. And this gives us a very, very hard time, Because when we try to now make a difference and try to get the funding, you get sponsors, investors asking you, you know, you guys are so many in the industry, and most of you don't even do the work. You get?
So there's doubt.
Yes, there's doubt. Yeah, and it's really hard, even with the communities. There's so many organizations that are coming and saying we want to do so much for you, and then they disappear. If at all an organization is really doing the work, let them do the work. If they're not, do not interfere. Do not give promises you cannot keep, or do not start a project that you'll stop midway, and it's going to affect a lot of people. Another thing, I think the last thing usually we have a hard time with is patriarchy in a way. Because right now, if you want to start a program in a village, in a rural place, you have to go through the patriarchy to get to them. Because if it's a school, you have to sit down with the board to tell them why you want to do the project. How will it be helpful? And this is not something that you should necessarily have to be having an argument with. It's something that it's an important thing while kids are in schools. So I believe usually that is usually an issue as well.
All right. I mean, I understand boards need to understand what activities the children are involved in, but the
Yes.
politics and
Politics,
bureaucracy in the communities and schools can be very disheartening as an advocate when you're out to do your job. Yeah. Oh. So as we go on with the conversation, back to debunking our myths. Myth number 5 was it? I'm not sure, but let's go on. Young. Brother, you lose gallons or liters of blood during every menstruation. What do you think about that? Are we going to fall down dead because we've lost a lot of?
No, we
Yes,
don't lose. We don't lose a lot of blood. It's not. It's definitely not gallons. Yeah, not even half a liter. Not even
60 ml at most, yeah? Okay, Aisha, you have your period for exactly 28 days, not more, not less, and you get them at the end of the month, like the way you get your salary.
I feel like that's not true.
Not true.
This comes to the topic of menstrual cycle. Do we actually have
Understand,
conversations about menstrual cycle? Because the menstrual cycle is different for every different girls, and you don't necessarily get the period at the end of the month. It depends with your menstrual cycle, and a menstrual cycle starts at the first day of your period to the next first day of your other period. So if this month I started my period on the 28th, now your menstrual cycle starts there to the next month, the first day of your next period. So usually I feel like young children are never aware of menstrual cycles. What are they?
So even when you get them irregularly, you're so
you're, like,
confused what's going on.
confused, Yeah, and
Yeah.
especially the young girls who've gotten their first periods the first time, I think it's necessary to tell them that your periods are gonna be missing for a couple of months, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Because I remember when I had my first period and I didn't get them for a while afterwards. I thought I had a problem. You'd be like, yeah, no one tells you, am I infertile? And I think when my biology teacher mentioned it, like just as a by the way, that's when okay, I'm fine now. Yeah.
So usually in school, it's like just a lesson, a biology lesson. It's a science class, but they don't go into really making you understand the experience, right? And let's just remember that every girl has a different experience to it. Some go for 3 days, some go for 4, some go up to 6, right? Yeah. Well, let's see. Okay, we've handled that. There's one best way to deal with your period. Is there just one thing? Up your pads. Kenneth, what do you think? Because you do the donations.
No, there are several ways to deal with menstruation, with periods. There's sanitary towels, and there's the disposable and the reusable. Yeah, and there are period cups, menstrual cups, tampons. Yeah, there are so many.
Yeah, there's so many ways. So, and each is different for every girl with different experience. Heavy flows, light flows. So you get to decide, because even with the pads, there are different types of pads, right? You have the extra long ones, so you get to decide what type according to your own experience, right?
But I feel like
yes.
with that, there's this conversation with pads girls do not get. There's the girls who have heavy flow and the ones who have light flow, and their pads for different. So, and a lot of girls do not necessarily know this because they're told, this brand is the best. So they just go for that brand because they've been told it's the best. But they've not been told that your preference, are you a heavy flow or a light flow? You should use that. Also, with tampons and menstrual cups, when people are taking them to schools for young kids, they should bring an experimental how to use it,
because
so that
because I feel like we've for a long time always used pads and talked about pads, but when it comes to other forms of ways to deal with your menstrual, your period, they're not talked about, right?
If I may say, no one would actually want to take tampons to donate them. Yeah, well, and also menstrual cups. I was told to use menstrual cups as a alternative, and I was like, no, I don't think that's the best thing, because they really don't know what this is. I might show them, then they forget. At least pads, they've seen, they've like heard about it. Yeah, like that's
on TV about
exactly. No one advertised tampons and menstrual cups. Like you won't see them regularly. So yeah.
Okay. So as we go back to the conversation, I'd like to understand, how can we support you, Kenneth, in your works, and also Aisha? Like, in what ways can we support your project?
Yes. So firstly, you can get me on my social medias. For Instagram, it's Kenneth_Chelagat, and my Facebook also, it's Kenneth_Chelagat. Yes, and you can also talk to me through my email, which is haileysawe32@gmail.com, and that can be added. And for any donations, you can channel them through my M-Pesa, which is +254 769 76 85 69. Yes, any support will be highly appreciated. Yes, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Please do support. This is an amazing project, an amazing initiative. I'd like us to wrap this conversation. What would your last words be, Aisha?
I think I'd divide it into different categories. I'd start with the educators, the parents, the teachers, necessarily the people who model the kids. It's high time you censor your words, what you tell the kids. Very, very careful, because we have a lot of kids with a lot of myths coming from their parents and their teachers. And this is horrible. We have a lot of negativity towards periods that come from parents. And it's really, really heartbreaking to see a kid hating womanhood because their parents said something, about girl, And to parents and teachers, please please stand up and protect your kids when predators. Yes. I think predators exist everywhere, and they use every means to get to children. And this is something that should be really spoken about. And if parents and teachers can actually stand up, even the kids themselves will learn from that. And also the young children and the girls who are undergoing periods and the boys who are also curious about it. Please do not shame other girls when they're having the periods for the first time, or when they leak into their clothes. Talk to them nicely, and also be your friend's keeper. Be your friend's keeper in terms of, if you hear a parent or another teacher telling their child something horrible about periods or shaming them, stand up for them. tell them that's not necessarily how an adult should talk to a child about something as important as that.
Yes. For me, my last words would be, let's make this thing normal. Like, it shouldn't be scary to talk about periods because it's there and it's normal. Yeah. So let's normalize the conversation around menstrual health. Yes.
Yeah, children, boys and girls, anyone who is listening to us, periods are normal. Let's have these conversations. They're not an injury, they're not an illness. And when it comes to period poverty, let us support our girls, because that's where early pregnancies come from, when you have to exchange sex for pads, which is very sad. Let's do a bit more research about it so that we debunk the myths around it. And let's be empathetic around such conversations with our girls. And let's not be shameful about it. Thank you for joining us. It has been amazing to have this conversation with you. Aisha and Kayanet, amazing things you're doing for our young girls. Our viewers, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again in our next episode of Toto on video podcast rather. But for now, bye bye. Thank you.